double header. Not everyone was able to be on at 6:45 this morning, and we don't want people to miss out on the importance of learning Torah, right? Correct, Yaron? Okay, okay. It's your zchut that you come, that you appreciate that you're here. Okay, none of it I want to thank Akiva for all his technical help. Okay, we're in the Gemara. We just had said earlier today, we're in Nunam Beis. We have a machloket. Can you use wine to wash your hands for the Tilat Yadayim for Hamotzi? That's the question in the Gemara. One opinion says, now, according to the way the text that we have in our Gemara, there are different texts in our Gemara. If it became real wine, that means it's real wine because you diluted the wine with water, because the wine in those days the grapes are very strong. Because the grapes are very strong, you couldn't. It wasn't. People generally did not drink the wine with raw without adding water to it. So the first opinion says that if it's not wine, and therefore you could actually use it to wash your hands. It's considered like water. Why? Because it's like the juice. This is how Rashi learns. It's the juice of the grape. Juice of the grape. It's the water of the grape. It's the sweat of the grape. It did not reach the level of wine unless you diluted it with water. That's one opinion of the Gemara. And the second opinion, the Chachamim say no. The Chachamim say you can't use it to wash your hands. Chachamim hold that it had. Since the Chachamim say you could do hagefen. Since you can do hagefen, so therefore it's not water. It's not the water of the fruit. It's a different level. It's already wine. Therefore, you can't go ahead and use it for Netilat Yadayim. That's what the Gemara said. And we saw in the Shulchan Aruch a whole discussion on this matter. Can you use wine if you don't have water? There's a discussion if can you use wine or can you use other fruit juices? Let's say orange juice, apple juice. There are those that say that orange juice and apple juice you could use, but you can't use wine. It's meaning there are different opinions. Some say you could use wine and you can use orange juice and apple juice. Some say you can only use fruit juices. You can't use wine. Some say you can't use any fruit juices. So there's many opinions whether. Again, obviously, we're talking in a situation when you don't have water. If you have water, you shouldn't be using apple juice, orange juice, or wine to wash your hands, correct? I think we had our good friend that looked like Morris was on. Morris, is that you? Let's see if Morris is on. I don't see him now. I see an iPhone. Probably it's Morris, besides Shmuel. Okay. So that was a discussion, if a person stuck without any water. So it would come out, l'halach l'maseh, if a person stuck without any water, I would go with the apple juice and the orange juice first before the wine. And if the only thing you have is wine, there is an opinion that says that you could use wine if you're stuck. That right? That's what we saw an opinion. This is in Kuf Sadik Hey, or this is in Siman Kuf. This is in Siman Kuf Samach Sif Yud Beis. Kuf Samach Sif Yud Beis. Let's see it again. We say the Shulchan Aruch says. Some say you only could use water and you cannot use any fruit juices, apple or orange juice. Some say you could use wine, and except you can't do it unless you're stuck. And some say wine will not help, only fruit juices. Okay, we have different opinions regarding that. Okay, now let's get to the Gemara. The Gemara says, "Kaman." The first word of the line is "Heimenu." Kaman oz lahadam Shmuel. First word osa adam kol tzarachav v'pat. Shmuel makes a statement. He says you could use bread to help you do. If you, let's say you need bread to serve a certain purpose. I have a loaf of bread, and I want to go ahead and use the bread to hold something. I want to put something on top of the bread to hold my safer. I want to make it into. I want to put a shelf on top of my bread. Not a shelf. I don't know if it's a good example. I want to thank you, Harold, for setting this up this morning with the tables and everything. I want to go. We did a double header, Harold. And what about if I want to use? Can I use bread not in the normal way of bread use? I usually eat bread. Can I use the bread to serve another purpose? So, and we're going to see exactly, are you wasting the bread or are you just using the bread for, so it says you could use bread for whatever you need. That's the language of the Gemara. We'll have to identify, what does that mean? Does it mean I'm allowed to go ahead and use bread in a way, in a way that's it's going to get ruined? So we'll have to see. I want to use bread. Let's say I have a hole in the wall. I want to fill in the hole. Can I use bread to fill in the hole in the wall? I need to make a painting. Can I use bread as part of the painting or not? So is that maybe that might be because I'm ruining the bread. Let's say if I'm not ruining the bread will stay intact and won't be ruined. We're going to see discussion whether the bread will be ruined as a result of me using the bread or not. If the bread is not being ruined, it would seem that's fine to use the bread. That's what it is. Also, I could use the bread for whatever needs I have. It's not called disgracing the bread. If I use the bread to hold my cup, let's say you have your cup and you want to put the bread on top of it, you want to put your cup of water. Okay, but and let's say it's talking about in the case when we're not afraid that your water is going to spill onto the bread. Because we're going to see there's certain things you can't do, that if it's probable that's going to be a spill and it's going to ruin the bread, that you can't do. But if you're using the bread for some other fashion, it says I could go ahead and use the bread. Because you see, the thing is, you're not to disgrace food. Rashi says in Sechus Tanit, Hashem gave it. And if you go ahead and you don't treat the blessing properly, Hashem gave you food, and you don't treat the blessing properly, that is disgraceful. But as long as you're not doing it in such a fashion, you're not disgracing it, you're allowed to go ahead. Aleph. Let's see how the Shulchan Aruch writes about, says there's a simon called in Shulchan Aruch, you're not allowed to treat food in an inappropriate way. You're not allowed to treat food in a disgraceful manner. Food you have to treat with a certain, and we're going to see the special halacha regarding bread, even in a certain sense. Meaning I can't, the Shulchan Aruch says I'm not allowed to throw bread. Even let's say I could throw, if I want to throw you an orange, and even if the orange drops, or let's say an apple or a hard apple, the food that's hard, if it falls, it won't, let's say a nut. I want to throw you a peanut. So technically I can throw you a peanut. The peanut falls on the floor. I'm not talking about a raw peanut. It's in the shell. The shell, it's on the shell, I'll still eat it, right? So I'm allowed to do that, but I can't throw bread. I can, but I can't have a catch with bread. Because it's not bread, it's a basic staple of a person, and it's not showing respect to the bread if you go ahead and you throw bread. Some Sfardim on Shabbat, they throw the bread, so they need to explain that, because the Shulchan Aruch, because they need to explain that opinion, because the Shulchan Aruch says you do not throw bread. What do you say? Oh, it's a minhag shtur. Oh, so he's saying that people are doing. He's saying it's a mistake. Again, it's more than a minhag. If it's a minhag shtur, then it's an issur. Right. That's where they also wrong. Okay. But he's saying,
Depending on what you're doing. But
Yeah.
just
okay,
after
Rashi.
activate
So he's saying must
I
be,
am like another listening and I can see it.
that's not called. I don't.
Going really.
But some
If they-
people I've seen. I was at somebody's house. I've seen it like that. You know what I'm saying? That's not respectful. If a person goes like this, I don't think that's called. I don't know if that's called throwing. You know what I'm saying? If you go like this, I don't think. You know what I'm saying? I don't know that when you go like this. You know, I was just the first time I saw it was not at a Sephardi house, the Ashkenazi house. I saw something I never saw it before. But this, so the Shulchan Aruch said you can't throw bread because of disrespect. And the Chafetz Chaim says from the Beis Yosef and other poskim, bread is different than other foods. Bread is forbidden even if it does not get room as a result of your throwing. Let's say if you throw it on a clean place. Let's say you just cleaned the floor and then you threw the bread. Right, on the right. Let's say on the table. But if I'm throwing the bread, the halacha says here that throwing the bread is not respectful for bread, and you can't throw bread. Now, if in your family, I don't know what the custom of your family, if your family they throw the bread, then you have to ask, they have to ask the halacha question more about it. Because like he was saying, what's your first name again? Yes, he was saying it could be. There's a law that says that you don't hand bread hand to hand. I don't hand you bread in your hand. The poor person comes to your house, you hand them a piece of bread. It's a sign of poverty when you hand bread directly. It's like if you hand me an apple, apple's not a basic staple of life. A poor person comes to get a piece of bread. So when you give a direct, you don't hand, someone wants to hand me a piece of bread, I ask them if you don't mind just put it down, just put it down, then I'll take it from you. I will never hand someone bread. I'll always put the bread in front of them.
Okay.
Even on Shabbat.
And leave the bread is in a plastic bag.
No, but that I don't think it's that. I don't think that's an issue. But that's not. You don't give a plastic bag to a poor man, and even I would say even a whole piece of bread, a whole bread, a whole challah. I think you can hand the whole challah to someone because when you give to a poor person, it's usually I would think it's a piece of bread. You don't give a poor person. People don't generally. It'd be nice if you give a poor person a whole bread, but I don't. But it usually that's why it's we say matzah is it's lechem oni. Usually that's why we break the matzah. Right, we make a motzi on the matzah that's broken. The alachilat matzah goes on the bracha alachilat matzah goes on the one that's broken. Many commentaries say because the broken piece is symbolic of poor man's bread, because that's what a poor man gets. It's generally a broken piece. Of course, when it comes to your house, you can say, but the common is they give a broken piece. So that's what the Shulchan Aruch says. You could use, use bread for other purposes as long as the bread doesn't get ruined, doesn't get disgraced. That's what the Shulchan Aruch says. Now let's continue in the Gemara. A person could do whatever he needs with bread. Rabbi Eliezer, that's like the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. Meaning Rabbi Eliezer said that you could go ahead and use the wine. He says you could use the wine to wash your hands for Netilat Yadayim. So if the opinion that says you could use bread for many, even you could use bread for other purposes. So certainly this opinion agrees with Rabbi Eliezer, because Rabbi Eliezer says that you could even wash your hands with wine. If you can wash your hands with wine, so definitely you could use the bread for other you could. That also shows you that you could use the wine for other purposes, even though wine is generally used for drinking. But this wine, according to Rabbi Eliezer, the wine that wasn't diluted, Rabbi Eliezer says you could use it to wash your hands from motzi. so too the Gemara says, the same way he says, so too, similarly, you could use bread for other purposes. If you, this opinion that says that you could use bread for other purposes is like Rabbi Eliezer, the same way Rabbi Eliezer says you could use wine for other purposes, so too, you could, opinion says you could use bread for other purposes. We'll see more tomorrow, Tosfos, and more discussion about this tomorrow. Okay, have a great day, everybody. Good to see you. Yes, we're gonna try to be here at 6:45 tomorrow for worship people. And
תודה רבה, אבי.
thank you very much for coming on.
תודה.
Great day.
גם לך. להתראות.
Yes.